Good evening, people, and welcome to the Compost. This is Martin coming to you from URC, that's Urban Renaissance Center for you who don't really know what's going on. And I'm welcoming you to the Compost. Now, this is not your typical compost, because we are not talking about some garden stuff or your hash or whatever. We're talking about community posting compost. And I'm here today with the lovely Miss Verna Shook. And we're here to discuss who she is, what she is, and why she is. She's a local artist, and I say the word local because she's in Flint, Michigan. Not because her work is just confined, because she is, you will see her stuff eventually, but this is Verna Shook. When I first met her, I was shook.
Interesting.
So I was like, oh my God, who did this piece of work? We met at an art show last year, and she had a piece that was mixed media, and it contained a lot of provocative things in it, and it immediately made me think. And I was like, wow, okay, who did this, and what's the story behind it? And I was kind of a little surprised to find out that a woman had done it, because it just looked so aggressive and masculine, if I can call artwork masculine or feminine. But it just had a lot of aggression into it. And I had never really seen an artist of the female persuasion tackling those topics so head on like that.
That's inspiring, if I may.
Yes, you may.
My family owned a liquor store on the Pure Road. I was third generation for 90 plus years. And so I watched my environment change into this. It became something that that I was really unhappy with. It became violent because after the crack era, things changed in the community. It used to be that our community was one where everyone knew one another. For generations, and then again with the crack era, we lost parents, children, grandparents, and it became very violent.
In short,
very violent.
We lost the community.
We did. And that was in part what I was speaking to, the violence. And the fact that I sold alcohol always made me feel a little guilty because I was contributing to the negative side of our community and even our children. But my family was always very responsible about it. Like, we never sold tobacco products to people who were underage, and our community being predominantly black, people would get mad at us for not doing it because they would say, well, we can go to the Arabs. And I said, yeah, you do that because they don't care about us. They don't care about you. All they want is your money. And that's no disrespect to the ones Arab people who do care, who do follow the laws, but there are laws in place for a reason, hoping that our kids will not, become addicted to these vices so early in life, because they do become vices. Alcohol abuse, all these things are dominant in the black community now. And now my family store has been closed for about 6-7 years, and I really don't have my hands on the community anymore. There's nobody coming to tell me what's going on, and so I really don't know it. And we just recently lost a person in my neighborhood to a family that I've known all of my life, which would have been the grandson of an elder now in our community, which was really hurtful because, again, I knew him, and it was ridiculous, senseless violence. And that you even mentioned that piece, it's inspiring me. These issues have not gotten better. They've gotten worse, actually, and I need to speak to that.
Well, as an artist myself, I've always felt a responsibility. I felt I was blessed with a talent that was beyond most, and I had an obligation.
I get that.
Because it's a voice.
Truly.
And you have an obligation to use your voice for something other than frivolities. And yes, making money, everybody got to make a living, I understand that. But at one point, At what point does making money supersede your human dignity and your pride? At what point does it become more important to you to just simply make money? Because when you reach that point, in my opinion, you're no longer an artist. You may have artistic abilities, because I was speaking to you before the interview about what I tell my kids in art classes. They always ask me, well, Mr. Martin, what is art? And I tell them, art is simply an expression, regardless of the medium or the media or the format. So I tell them it is my job as an art teacher to find out what's going on up here, to figure out what's going on down here,
Absolutely.
and to translate that into this.
Absolutely.
That's what I define art as. We find out how you think, what you think, and why you think. How you feel, what you feel, and why you feel, and then get you to express that.
That's important because I find myself lately artistically stuck because I've been trying to do pretty things. Life isn't pretty. You know, those are like side piece fun things. They have to be. But you're right. I have a responsibility, and I'm going to work on that because that's where my power comes from. That's where communication exists to discuss the things that are going on in my community, and not just my community, but the broader community, because I just recently got back from the Bahamas, and my family, I went for an honorary doctorate's degree in seminary humanities.
Okay.
And that was really an honor and a blessing, but I said that to say that my family started traveling to Nassau in the 80s. And so it was so different, and I hadn't been there since 2007, so it's like 17 years that I hadn't been there, and things have changed so much. It's so Americanized. It's just so Americanized. It's just kind of disgusting. And like, you used to be able to drive over to Paradise Island or take the ferry, and you could just go anywhere over there you wanted to go. Now it's so corporate America. Everything is gated. Honestly, you can't see anything. You just go in one circle because there are guards at gates that you can't get in. And so we know that, you know, a lot of celebrities own property there. And I don't think that anybody, I really am pissed at the Bahamian government for allowing, because it's money, for allowing, you know, non-Bahamian people to buy their island and not even allow the people that live there to be there.
You know, see, that reminds me of an old Indian adage. Like, how do you own the world?
How?
You don't own the rain, you don't own the sky, you don't own the wind.
How do you own ocean?
You come here.
They are on oceanfront property, which we can't have access to now because they own it. And I knew right away it was American. I could feel that because that's what we deal with over here.
Well, you know, one of the Bahamian ministers, Mr. Miles Monroe, I don't know if you've heard of him or not. He's deceased now, but he was from the Bahamas, and he got his PhD from Oral Roberts University.
Okay.
And he began to speak against that, against the rest of the world Americanizing.
Yes.
Because he was saying that you don't know how powerful America is until you leave it.
Yeah.
And then you see how it influences everything.
Everything. Even gas prices. You know how we have our gas prices listed. They're big. They're on a billboard type of a situation, lit up. You know exactly how much this place is charging for gas per gallon. In the Bahamas, it's not like that. There is absolutely no read of how much gas prices are, and some of the pumps don't even have the numbers. You know, it doesn't even tell you how much you're getting per gallon. So you are literally at the mercy of whatever they say that your money is covering. Its gas prices are unregulated.
Wow.
I was blown away. And as an American, clearly that's one of the first things we look for, even though I wasn't driving or anything, but like, why are there no listing for gas prices? That's wild.
So, piggybacking off of that, is that enough to inspire you to do a piece of work?
It is.
Because the work that I showed you earlier, that I was telling you about when I was down in Mott, being told that I had toxic masculinity because I wasn't conforming to the wave of this present society. I was kind of old school, so I was doing things the way I knew to grow up, growing up and everything. And I was told that's not acceptable anymore. So I was actually vilified and villainized at every turn. Nothing I could do was acceptable anymore. Nothing I could say was, everything was regulated. And I was like, this is crazy. And so when I would talk to people or speak with people and reflect on the good old days, I was always maligned for that. And it got to the point where I'm walking around on eggshells now. I can't even talk about anything that's the good old days without offending somebody.
Well, I think you shouldn't care about offending people because they offend you.
Well,
they offend you by expecting you to bow to whatever it is that what their demands are becoming. Recognize me as this, not as I am, and that's too bad. I'm not doing it.
That's the reason why I composed that piece, because when I started listening to all these anecdotes was that how evil men were and how evil and violent black men were. Had it not been for George Floyd being murdered, that was a turning point in which black men now had sympathy. Prior to that, why didn't he comply? He got what he deserved, and so on and so on.
You always hear that. You see this young man who's in the military, 23 years old, who just got killed by a police officer. He just opened his door. I mean, he's a military officer, and there are no laws against owning a gun in this country. Everybody has a gun. Everybody, and if you don't, get one. That's all I have to say. Get one. You can't take a knife to a gunfight. And so anyway, with that said, he had his gun at his waist, and that cop, he opened his door, which I suggest people never open their doors for police. Don't ever open the door. Don't let them in. Now, if he breaks in, you have every right to respond with fire or whatever you got to do. Is cause self-defense.
With force.
Exactly. And so anyway, now he's dead for nothing because he's a black man and he's a black man, and there is no other argument. It's not because he just had, he didn't point that weapon at that police officer. And what we have a serious racist issue in this country, and it's ugly and it's tiresome, and we have to fight back. We have to find a way to fight back. And listen, I have to speak to this because this is what's on my heart. I am in environments of white people, and I don't mean this disrespectfully because that's where I do my art from all the time, and I find myself, I know why now I haven't been doing political things. It's because, or life things, because they're real. These are life things. This is how I live my life. This is what goes on around me and in my culture. I have to explain myself now. My culture is not your culture. We have to embrace who we are. We need to know who we are. That is very important, or we are going to get lost, just like I was recently lost. I'm glad that you invited me to come to this interview. I'm glad that you spoke to my piece, which was a very important piece. It was important to me because it was a reflection of the community from which I am from. So cultural differences should always be respected, and they won't unless we know who we are and until we stand on them. We have to stand on them.
I used to do a lot of political things when I was at Mott, and a lot of the people would ask me, why are your pieces always so violent and so they weren't violent, they just reflected my society, basically. Right. And I was like, why are your pieces always so political and so violent? And I was like, this is the world in which we live.
Absolutely.
Everything I don't see unicorns and rainbows all the time. So when I see people doing these compositions that are so happy and so frivolous and so light and airy, and I couldn't do that because I was like, that's not my reality.
I can't do it either. I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
And people would be like, you have so much talent. You could make a beautiful unicorn. I'm like, but why would I do that? And then
Well, you can do that when you're chilling in the Bahamas somewhere, and you just waking up to the ocean and snapping off the top of a coconut and putting your straw in there and just drinking it. Then you can do your unicorns. Right now we have work to do, real work.
That's the whole thing, because I did a lot of pieces that people found to be offensive, and it wasn't until the professors would break stuff down for us and say what he's doing is not offensive. If you're offended by it, you are just misinformed. And so Professor Eddie Watkins,
Oh, I know Mr.
he told me, he said,
Watkins.
listen, man, what you're doing is fine. Don't ever lose your voice. Don't get so wrapped up in what the wave is and what's
agree.
acceptable that you lose your voice.
It's important.
He says, bro, you have a way with that paintbrush. So don't let the naysayers tame your opinion, is what he was basically telling me. Don't conform to whatever the latest little,
I agree.
because everybody was doing rainbows and unicorns and angels.
Oh my God, this is
and
really cathartic. I appreciate
everything
this.
was so bubbly and so light and just so, and I was like, what universe do you people live in?
It's not mine either.
I mean,
I'm lost, period. I went to the Bahamas and started finding myself again. I hate to say it like that, but it's true, because for me, the Bahamas is spiritually my home. And I knew that the very first second I saw it when I was 20 years old, flying over the island to land. I instantly, God slapped me. Like, this is where you belong.
Wow.
And that's what I feel. Like, I feel loved there. I feel seen. Black men talk to me. They tell me I'm beautiful. I never get that kind of action in Flint, Michigan.
wow.
I never, ever. And you know what? We have a lot of mixed couples here. Black men, they don't even see you. They won't even speak to you.
Well, here's my experience with Flint, Michigan.
It hurts. It hurts.
It's my experience with America in general.
Truly, that
If
part.
I don't smile, I am a perceived threat. I used to be a supervisor at a warehouse years ago. I was in my 30s. And I was a slim little fella, so I wasn't this hulking, imposing personality. And I had a nice little conservative haircut, the little fade and everything, and no facial hair, just a little hint of a mustache.
That's too bad, Martin Turner. None of the men in my family smile. Do you hear me? This man told my grandfather one time, he said, you smile when you wait on me. My grandfather said, don't you ever tell me what to do with my face. Ever.
Wow.
My brothers didn't smile. I mean, it wasn't because they weren't nice people or whatever, but not everybody is nice. You shouldn't. Somebody just recently told me, you shouldn't smile at everybody.
Well, the odd thing was, I didn't realize how accommodating I was.
I get that.
Because this was a profession in which I had to kind of cater to the baser.
And our generation is that we're the more watered down, assimilated version of our people.
Exactly.
And that's what we have. I have really worked on my daughter knowing who she is from the people that she comes from, because she needs to be able to put that armor on every day. You are not white.
Well, with the cultural assimilation that we have had going on today in this world, it's really difficult to tell what's Afrocentric and what's commercial, because there's so much
Good
of it is
point.
intertwined nowadays that there are things that you see on TV and you wouldn't even think of it as being African, because everybody's doing it but us.
But the thing is, we're not just African in this country. We're also Native.
We are. We
are a mixed people. We're not just Africans.
Well, if you want to get technical about it, Africans were here first.
That's the word.
We were here first.
That's the word on the street these days, for real.
I mean, we were here at least 100,000 years before the first Inuit migrated down from Siberia, coming through Alaska, and then came here.
There is no place we haven't been.
We are indigenous to the world.
Exactly.
We are. I had this epiphany, if you want to call it that, back in 2012, that my first form of citizenship was the world. Not America, not Michigan, not Flint, but I was a citizen of the world.
I always felt like that too, because I started traveling really young, I went to Hawaii when I was 12. My best friend moved there, 6th grade. And so, like, that summer I went to visit, and I went to 4 different islands. And then at 18, I went to Europe. I went to France and Belgium. And then at 20, I was in the Bahamas. And then at 25, I had a boyfriend in Toronto. So every other weekend, I was in Toronto. So, yeah. And that's been my greatest education and my greatest sense of self. It always brought me back to myself and made me feel even more responsible about knowing who I am, because that's the face I wear when the world sees me.
So riddle me this then.
What?
How do you think going forward this will influence your art?
This is powerful. I got to work on it. Because one thing too that I realized when I got back a couple of weeks ago was that I've been watching other people do art. I haven't been doing my stuff. And so that I was kind of lost. And that's why I feel really emotional, because I kind of lost myself.
It's easy to do that, though, because, I mean, I see people all the time on YouTube doing things that I did as an 8th grader, 7th grader. And I see all these hundreds of thousands of likes and all these comments about this is amazing. And I look at it and go, how sophomoric. And, so, you know, I feel kind of arrogant sometimes.
That's okay.
Because that's where I was at as a 13-year-old.
Right.
And I'm like, am I full of myself here? Because they are amazed at this guy for doing this stuff that I had to learn not to do, because it was so far in my past and for lack of a better term, so far beneath my talents right now.
You know, one thing I've learned about artists, people who are real artists, you got people who do art and they're real artists to me. And let me clarify here. To me, real artists are real introverted people. We spend a lot of time by ourselves for whatever reason.
Reflecting, introspection.
It may not even be because it was by choice. For me, I'm a 5-time cancer survivor. My life has been interrupted so many times. And so I'm just not normal, whatever the hell that is. I am so not that. It's like at 14, I had Hodgkin's disease. At 27, I had non-Hodgkin's disease. At 49, I had Hodgkin's disease again. At 51, I had anaplastic large T-cell lymphoma, and then in 21, I had anaplastic large T-cell lymphoma again. My life has been interrupted so many times. And throughout all of those times, and they were stretches of time, like from 14 to 17, that interrupted my formative adolescent life. You know, like I didn't date, and people would say funny stuff like, oh, sweet 16, never been kissed. I had never been kissed. Everything was later for me in life. Like I hate to say it, but I missed out on love on a friend that I'm in love with him. I'll be in love with him till the day I die, no matter what happens. But because I was retarded, not mentally, my lifespan was not on track with most people my age. So what most people were ready for at 20, I wasn't. I was 16.
So your development was arrested.
It was.
Okay, I get that.
And so I kind of had a ooby-dooby personality.
Okay.
But with real life responsibilities, like I always worked, because my family had this serious work ethic. You had to work in my family. If you don't work, you don't eat. That's the Bible. And so,
okay.
You know, everything was delayed. So.
Well, you know what? I gotta say that my life was the exact opposite of that.
Interesting.
Because as a child, I never really thought about childish things. I was already considering, the cosmos.
I didn't either. I was dealing with a life-threatening disease that, as a matter of fact, at 14, Hodgkin's disease, I was in every hospital in Flint. They weren't even able to diagnose it here. I was taken to Children's Hospital by ambulance because I was in a semi-comatose state. They overlooked it here in Flint. They weren't looking for a 40-year-old white male disease in a 14-year-old black child.
Okay.
you know, and at that time, cancer was a death sentence.
It was.
It was a death sentence, and God let me live to prove everybody wrong. And again, and again, and again, and again. And I also was told I would never be able to have any children. I have an amazing 27-year-old daughter. And yeah, I just think that, you know, I will say this, at the lieu of getting too deep. The times that my life was arrested, I had to spend communing with God. Because there was nobody else. There was nobody. You know, people, they couldn't understand that because I was having a hard time accepting it myself sometimes. I had to make peace with it.
So we have experienced life from opposite ends of the spectrum. So yours was through basically like calamity, if you want to call it.
You could call it that.
My life experience was basically euphoric.
I had a lot of euphoria.
I mean, I was basically, from the time I was 4 years old, I was in my own world.
For sure, at 8, I was gone.
I never, it's like, you know, I had friends. I played sports. I knew the little girls around the neighborhood, but I was most at home in my books.
Me too.
Growing up.
I was very booky.
And I learned I could travel anywhere in this world through my books. This is before we had internet and all this kind of junk we got nowadays. So my head was always, on a Saturday afternoon, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, you would find me at the public library reading. I wouldn't check a book out. I would just go down there and crack a book open and read it. And I'm doing this every Saturday until weather was no longer permitting that. And this was like my way of passing time.
Same.
And I chose to. It wasn't something that I was required to do. So fast forward 3 or 4 years later, I'm in school reviewing the same junk I read as an 11-year-old, and it's boring me to tears. So my focus in school was just all over the place. People would be like, why are you a C student?
That's same.
Why are you not catching on to this stuff? And I'm thinking to myself, it's not that I don't know it. It just doesn't interest me anymore. So as a,
and school education, the way it's set up, it wasn't set up for us. I mean, how do you take humanities? I'm going to say this. How do you take humanities and you're studying certain ages and period and you don't, it's never told to you that those are your people they're talking about. You know, we always feel excluded. Everything is set up that way. As a matter of fact, the American education system was set up by the Daughters of the Confederacy. It was never with us in mind. It was always to keep us off track, not engaged in who we were as a people, and that all these people they were talking about, they weren't white people, they were us. But we never made that correlation, unless, of course, you had families that were, because I grew up with a family who were Muslim, and my friend went to Muslim school, and she was a genius. She has like 3-4 law degrees, for real. And
that's really ironic, because when I hear you say that kind of stuff, I always knew about my culture. I just never had an opportunity to express it.
I did too. My brother was Muslim. My oldest brother was 15 years older than me. And so by the time I was really cognizant of life, he was gone, but he left a box of books that I read. And it changed my whole life. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with my father when I was 18, and I told him, I said, your generation dropped the ball. He said, what are you talking about? I said, your generation dropped the ball. We're all assimilating now. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that we come from enslaved people. It's like a bad word. Nobody wants to deal with that because you want to make your middle class money, live in your middle class neighborhoods, and a lot of people are just, black people are so bourgeois they can't even see their own feet, you know?
That's really ironic.
He agreed with me because he shunned that.
Yeah, because my mother was always, for the lion's share of my life, she was lower class. And then as I got to be a teenager, when she got into General Motors, our status changed. But I never lost my love of reading, though. And so I always knew this is how my little crazy mind used to work. I knew when I first picked up the A encyclopedia.
And that was common in homes.
The first thing it showed you was the origin of the letter A. And if you read it properly, it took you back to ancient Egypt. So I'm like, okay, so this thing wasn't always an A. It had a symbol representing it. And I had enough understanding to know that the ancient Egyptians were not white. So I'm like,
Good for you.
so what you're telling me then, so what you're telling me then is that everything that I'm learning essentially came from me.
Mm-hmm.
Now it doesn't look like me anymore, but I had an astuteness about me as a kid that I learned not to question that stuff. I just accepted what they told me as the norm.
I know, we
Went
all
on about
did.
my little business, but I knew within myself that
Not all of us.
this is crazy. And so when I started getting to be 16, 17 years, 18 years old, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of being incorporated gradually into society because I wasn't cute anymore.
Mm.
And so I was viewed as a threat now. And I knew why.
Wow.
I understood exactly why I was considered a threat. So when I joined the military, I had to put right in front of my face why I'm a threat. And it wasn't anything that anybody told me. It was what I saw.
Where was your father?
My father was out of my life from the time I was 3 years old.
Okay, because I'm like, my dad was so, my dad commanded authority and respect. He commanded it, and he got it.
That's so funny because when I was in the military, people are going to talk to people who are common.
Mm-hmm.
There was always this contingency of brothers in the military who were, they call them woke now, I guess, but they were aware of themselves. And they'd be sitting there advising you,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is what they told you, but this is what it is. So you can't do what they do because you're not like them. And this is why you can't do what you, so on and so on. So I always had that somebody like a mentor in my ear giving me directions. And so I started understanding that I was never inferior to anybody.
Never.
And see, this was driven home by the way I performed in the military.
Mm.
Everything that they gave me that was supposed to be a challenge was a joke to me. And I would watch people struggle and go, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just grasp this simple concept? This is not rocket science.
Well, you know, in black families, it was always taught. My friend's mom, Ann Gregory, I love you, Mom. She told us every day, you're as good as many and better than most.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, my grandmother always was, you have to be twice as good.
Mm-hmm. That's all I heard all my life.
You have to be twice as good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Can't be average.
and then like everything has changed. You know, there was a community within a community within a community. People went to church, and so you were taught certain mannerisms and behavior and respect for yourself, for your elders. These things almost don't exist anymore.
Well, those things led to a certain degree of civility within our communities.
It certainly did.
And there were so many unspoken rules that by the time you were 5, you already knew it already.
Thank you.
I remember when I first had a Caucasian friend, my first one, and I was 7 years old. And I went to his house, and it knocked my socks off, the way he spoke to his parents. I was like, when I got home that day, I was like, I don't even think I could even think like that.
Yeah, that is different because in my community, in my neighborhood, I went to Scott Elementary School, Whittier, Junior High, Central, Mott, University of Michigan. I said that to say this. In my neighborhood, my principal he lived in my neighborhood. He was black.
Mm-hmm.
My dentist lived down the street. He was black. Our realtor lived across the street. He was black. My uncle was a doctor. He lived in my neighborhood. He was black. People were black in my neighborhood. And then and the funny part about it is we moved into the neighborhood that's called the Valley when I was 3 years old, and it was white.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as black people moved in, they moved out.
Mm-hmm.
But there were still a few families. But yeah, things. See again, cultural differences.
Mm-hmm. So riddle me this then. How do you think that influenced your art growing up?
What, that I'm black?
No, the realization that you had a different culture than what you were actually told.
I think in my art initially it was speaking to social issues.
Well, see, I never.
So because I have never been able to express, or I won't say able to, I have just never expressed the ingenue and the richness of what I came from.
Okay.
Because it's in me, and I take it everywhere I go, and
Okay.
people know that I'm different. Everybody knows it because I wear it, and because it's coming from the most sacred place in my heart.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So you would say that that definitely influences your art then, right?
Absolutely.
Because like growing up as I was in a whitewashed world, Superman, Batman,
right.
Spider-Man, even the Hulk, despite being green, we're all still Caucasian
They
people.
totally were.
And so when I started drawing realistic people at about the 6th grade level, all of my examples were white people. And so I drew Caucasian art until I got in the 8th grade, and then I discovered Luke Cage in Marvel Comics, and he was a brother.
Let me tell you something. I had this love or fetish for vampires, and it was in the 70s when Blackula came out.
Yes, it was.
And so my dad, he was very, very protective, and he was like, Verna, because I was going to go with my cousins, he was like, no, don't go and see it. Of course I went to see it. And I wouldn't go in our basement for like 4 months. That whole summer, I would not go down there. And my dad would have to go down there with me to show that, Dracula wasn't in our house. Because he was black, it just made it really real for me. Mm-hmm. Before, I wasn't scared. But then, and I can't remember the great actor's name who played Blackula, but I was scared for real.
That's funny. Mm-hmm. I think the one advantage I've had over most people with all my readings and everything was my mom told me when I was 5 years old, I remember watching an episode of Rifleman, Chuck Connors.
Mm-hmm. She liked him.
And then I saw this other movie with one of the guys that he had killed. It was on this other movie. And I'm like, Mom, I thought he was dead. She said, boy, that's just TV, it ain't real. And from that point on, I view TV as strictly a source of amusement, because these are people who are acting now, and no matter how well they acted and how convincing a role it was, they were actors. And so when I started doing my drawing, it reflected the same thing. I never did fantasy stuff. I never did unicorns.
I've been trying to do fantasy stuff, not unicorns, but
I always did realistic stuff.
Hmm.
When I was growing up, I remember being in the 9th grade, going to Dolan Junior High School out there in Beecher. And if you know anything about being an artist in schools, there's always somebody who can draw better than you.
Absolutely.
And there's always people who let you know that. Oh, you okay, but such and such can draw better than you. And I heard that all my life. You know what, you all right, but he can draw better than you. And I would always be like, who are you talking about? Oh, and then I would meet this guy and say, that's better than me. And I'm like, oh, so you see my doodling and you think this is what I do.
That's interesting because
Okay.
I've always been an abstract artist. I never cared about portraitist drawing.
Wow.
I respect it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an amazing talent to be able to replicate a person. Like where it looks exactly like them. Mario Moore, an artist who was just recently showcased at the FIA. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a workshop with him. He gave me some pointers on how to draw people, but I never really took that part serious. I really was not that interested in portraitist type of
Well, I had a
work.
teacher in 10th grade, and they made him retire the next year. And he was the only guy ever taught me anything about art. Mr. Hendricks at Northern High School. He's an older guy. And it was
Hendricks?
Mr. Hendricks.
Hendricks, okay.
And this is so ironic because a year after he retired, Ronald Reagan got in office and they lifted the retirement age. He's already gone now, though. And this guy taught me so much. And he was the guy who simplified art for me. He would say, you getting lost in details, son. You got to see this stuff for what it really is and quit trying to be so fancy. And he was teaching me about basics of drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And just when I'm starting to grasp what he's saying, they make him retire. And I kind of lost my interest in portraiture because of that. And so after I got into the magnet program and I'm over at Central, the teachers are asking me, how did you do that? I was like, you're the teacher, what are you asking me for?
You know, I was self-taught. I had a couple of formative art classes at the FIA, but that was like, I was like a teenager.
I had my first class at the FIA and I was 5 years old.
But I mean, I was always over there because it was in my community, literally from Whittier to Central's across the parking lot.
No.
So we always had access.
In my defense, though, I was forced to go there. I didn't want to go there.
Okay.
My mother said, boy, they give you a scholarship, you going. This thing interrupted my summer. I was a 5-year-old.
Well, I'm glad you did.
What 5-year-old wants to go to school in the summer?
Well, it only enriched
I wasn't
you,
one.
I'm sure.
But see, I had to still get up in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, go to this thing. And yes, I was doing art. Wasn't no reading and no writing and no counting, but I was still waking up every morning.
Kudos to your mom. I'm an academician. Do it.
But see, I had to go to, it was just art though.
Right.
I mean, I learned macrame. I learned how to.
But you learned some things.
Oh yeah,
some
but
skills.
I'm saying, I said that to say this. When I was in this class, I was rejected.
You were?
Yeah, because number one, I was the only black person in the class.
Oh, that's always the case.
Number two, everybody else in the class were high schoolers. And I'm a 5-year-old kid. So, I could imagine what they said when I walked out of the classroom, because I walked in the first day and my sister was accompanying me and they thought she was the one that was the student. And she goes, no, I'm with him. He's the artist. And everybody's, what does he know about art? And I was like, wow. Now, I didn't realize it then that I was being ridiculed. But I was like, what do you know about art? Because I'm a mouthy little fella. I don't know nothing about, respecting these, because they're not my elders. They're kids just like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And everything we did, every project we did, I had the best thing in the classroom. And these kids like, what kind of a freak is this dude? I mean, every paper mache. I did an elephant that was actually as big as I was.
Wow.
And they were like, how is a little kid doing this? We're sitting here watching him doing it, but we don't understand it. They're doing clowns and cartoon and stuff. I'm doing a freaking elephant. That looks like an elephant.
Mm-hmm. Trunk,
tusks, ears, wrinkled skin, the whole 9 yards. My art teacher asked me if he could keep it. I'm like, I'm not gonna take it home, so I guess so. So I let him keep it. I don't know what he did with it, but I was like, this is what it is. And that was my introduction to art, though. They taught me macrame. 5-year-old learning macrame.
You know something, you make me think about college. Like some art classes I took when I was at U of M. And I used to get so pissed because they never talked about any black artists. And one day I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, you know what, I'm not even interested in any of this. I don't even remember who the artists were that he was talking about. And he's a person that I won't say his name, but and he was like, what do you mean? And of course everybody's looking at me. I said, I am the only black person in here and none of what you're teaching is interesting to me. It doesn't speak to my culture. Mm-hmm. It doesn't speak to me ethnic, whatever it is.
Ethnically.
Yeah. It doesn't speak to my ethnicity. It doesn't speak to me at all. Mm-hmm. And I'm offended. So why don't you have somebody on this list that I can relate to?
Wow. Now, you know what? That's the irony of irony, because when I was at Mott, my sculpturing teacher told me that I hope you go on to get some advanced degrees, but I really hope you don't stop in Europe, because that's not where you're going to get your... I'm serious. She's a European. She said, I would advise you to go to Africa and then go to China.
Yes, I want to go to Africa.
And then go to China, and you're going to get a proper education on sculpting, because that's where stuff started from. It didn't start with the Renaissance, like they always say. And to hear her say that to me.
They all copied from us.
Exactly, but she was like, you're not going to find
Even
much.
textile art, like, you know,
Everything.
the emblem for Louis Vuitton or Gucci and all of that. Do you know that was from Africa?
The swastika's from Africa.
So, and our people are walking around here killing each other over it.
That's weird because
It's sad.
that's one of the reasons why I am driven to do art the way I am, because I intend to open America's eyes to the reality of what our reality is.
I like that. That's important.
That's why I don't do QC work anymore.
You know what? I'm done too. I was gonna do this piece for my large scale painting class. I'm scrapping the whole project. I have to. And you know, another thing about getting this honorary doctorate's degree in humanities, it made me think I have a greater responsibility. I have a greater responsibility to my people.
Well, I look at
I really do.
a guy like Jacob Lawrence.
I love his work. Romare Bearden too.
It reflected his culture.
It did, in fact.
And he basically took what they taught him and tossed it out the window and interpreted it according to his own self.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, you're going to get authentic art.
You know what, that piece that you liked, I actually took a snippet of Jacob Lawrence's work and it was in there.
Okay.
And of course, you know, the, oh God, what is it called? Now, of course, I'm not going to be able to think of it. But the building on art thing, it's actually a word that I can't think of right now. But that was Romare Bearden, collage.
Oh, collage, okay.
Collage.
Yeah.
And even I've done it in my glass work, like taken like foil, this one piece that I just recently sold, and I implemented that into the glass. It was fused in between pieces, which look like snow on a mountain. So yeah, that the whole collage thing, Romare Bearden, I love him. I credit him for some of the stuff that I really use in my serious work. I'm gonna have to start calling it
So
serious.
I gotta
not the
ask you though,
doobie stuff. Yeah.
how did you get started in art though?
At 8, my parents bought me a oil paint by number set.
Wow.
And I was like, dang, I can draw for real. You know, just doing the outlines or whatever. And so I started drawing and I realized that I can draw anything concentratedly. Anything.
Wow.
Except for people. But that's a skill unto itself, one that I would definitely have to learn. And maybe it's because maybe intrinsically I really don't have that much interest. You know, portrait stuff is not my thing.
Well, I've always thought that the reason people who can't draw portraiture, they can't do so because they overthink it. Because it's really simple.
Well, you have to teach me. I think I asked you that before.
You did.
Okay.
I mean, the way I teach my kids is to get out of details. Details confuse and lose. I always say that. Simplify stuff. Because it's something that I did learn from said number artist, said number teacher that I won't name because you would think about it, was that there's a universality in humanity.
Absolutely.
And when you understand a universality, everybody looks the same.
I agree with that. What I learned as a young person and working in my family's businesses, my mother taught me that there's no such thing as a stranger, which has saved my life. It has saved my life. I mean, so many times I can't even tell you how that philosophy has saved my life. And the fact that I started traveling young and meeting people from different cultural backgrounds has also been an additional beautification to what I think is life.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll say this. As a teenager, I was a typical teenager. I was rambunctious. I was headstrong and foolhardy. And I did some stuff that had I gotten caught, I would have been put in jail for. But I said that to say this. The people that we victimized, and we did victimize people, were asking for it.
Okay, that's
now when I say that,
yeah,
I say anybody that has been on the streets for any degree of time can spot a victim from a mile away. There's victim behavior, that you exhibit.
That's true.
And being friendly is not one of
That's
them.
very true. That is definitely something that black people learn early.
Being friendly is not conducive with being a victim.
It's not.
I mean, they used to tell me dogs can smell fear. Well, doggone it, people can too.
That's true. They can.
I mean, when we used to actually, here's the thing about how crazy we were. We never picked the soft targets. We would go up to somebody who was twice our size and accost them.
No, I was never into that.
We were. That's why I say I was a typical teenager boy.
I reckon.
And we would do things that not only was it foolhardy, that were just downright stupid and dangerous. And we always emerged unscathed because we could read people.
My brothers were, actually, you know the book, The Watsons Go to Birmingham? Do you know that book?
Yeah.
Well, both of my brothers' names are in it, and my eldest brother more than anybody's because he was considered the bully.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he was dangerous. He had a very dangerous disposition. He always told me, Vern, if you ever get in a fight, kill him. Just kill him. And my brother Larry was, if you know that it's going to be a fight, before people show up and everything, punch that person first. Mm-hmm. He told me where to do it, and they're just going to fall out and walk away. He said, don't, just leave.
That's what I'm saying about...
why are we even talking about this?
Because this is the kind of stuff that basically was a welcome respite from my art.
Oh.
I mean, I did teenage things as a teenager. But I always retreated back to my world of art, always.
Well, you know what, in my community, working at Southside Community Store, I love that place. That was my world within my world within my world. Little kids would always come in, like I told you at the onset of the whole crack epidemic thing. Little kids would come in unescorted by their parents, which was just so sad. And I would teach them how to draw. You know, I would take out cardboard and some of my paints or crayons and entertain them until their parents showed up. You know, and that is when I realized, too, that I was an educator because I didn't play with them. Mm-hmm. You know, I taught them some skillful things.
I was fortunate enough, if you want to call it that, that I was not in Flint when crack was originally onset. When I got back from the military, I was like, what the hell happened in my city?
It was sad like a mug. I was happy to have been traveling, but it just took out generations of us. Talented people.
It amazed me
people.
that this much carnage could ensue in 4 years. I left here as GM was leaving here because we didn't have any more future prospects going.
Right.
So that's when I left. And when I come back here, okay, I didn't expect GM to be here, but I didn't know what the heck crack was either, though. And I was like, what is going on with this city? Everybody that I thought had all this potential to be athletic stars or academic, whatever, was either on crack or selling crack. And I was like, what the hell happened to the city of Flint?
It was really something.
So I look at that and I say, that too inspired my art also. Mm-hmm. Because it made me look at life in a lot more serious and a dark mode than I ordinarily would have. And it made me understand the consequences of decisions.
Same. I sold alcohol to people, and I saw the devastation of it.
Yeah, but see, alcohol has always been in our community.
It has always been in our communities, but when crack came, everything just exploded. Everything got worse.
And I look at that and I say, I wasn't here when it first happened, so I didn't see the progression. I just saw the results afterward. And because I was never a drinker, I was always sober-minded. And I was always in situations where anything could have jumped off. And I was always aware of it. So I was never really blindsided by too much stuff. And I would see people who were just not aware and doing crazy stuff. Because they weren't aware of the surroundings.
Well, this brings me to ask you a question about your art. Why do you do a lot of animals?
Because animals are non-threatening, but at the same time, they're still serious, though. They're non-threatening.
That's true if you stay out of their way.
I mean, animals are as big a part of nature as we are.
They're essential.
But I've actually been commissioned to do a lot of the animals I do, though.
Oh, that's cool.
So, but I mean, animals are what inspire religion.
Mm-hmm.
See, people don't even understand when you look at all the Egyptian gods and everything with the animal heads.
Mm-hmm.
Those weren't gods like we think they are.
They were animals.
They were characteristics imbued or embodied in humans.
Yeah, elephants are, that's a symbol even for a particular sorority whose name I won't mention. But yeah, elephants are, to me, all animals have spirits.
And they're pure.
And they are. And when people say, "Oh, I don't like cats," I'm like, why? What cat have you ever had an interaction with that made you not like them? I don't think people think.
Particularly something that you did to the cat that maybe triggered the cat to do what you don't like.
And in Egyptian teachings, that it's that single-colored cats keep bad spirits away. I believe that. I think they all do, but maybe the single-colored ones have more power. Because I've always had a cat, so as an adult.
We have canvassed so many topics outside of our.
I know.
But see, the reason that I took you there, I kind of got to understand how to trigger you, how to pull things out. I knew that because that's just who I do and who I am. But I did that.
Whatever, Martin.
I did that.
It was topical today because I was feeling rather emotional.
I did that, once again, people. I did that because I like people to understand what inspires art. I like people to understand that no matter what you're going through and how bleak your situation might be, it ain't the end all. And it could be whatever triggers you that might inspire you to greatness. Because one man's art is another man's go trash, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I look at a lot of people who have latent talent, but they've never had anybody pull it out of them before.
Well, I do appreciate the fact that you did bring me back around to what I really need to be doing. I can't be doing the pretty stuff. This is not the time for pretty. The pretty can come when I'm in my cute little house near the ocean where I can go out and crack open my coconut in the morning. Then I can do that. But right now I've got like real issues that need to be addressed. And
well, see, I do pretty when pretty is commissioned.
Yeah, it can be pretty. Ugly can be pretty. The truth can be pretty.
I mean, when it's commissioned, you want me to do your little puppy? Okay, I'll do your puppy. That's fine. But I mean, it's not that I'm in a dark place.
I am.
But pretty ain't what I do. It never has been what I've done. So, because pretty to me is not realistic.
I am right now because I came back to Michigan and I have been sad ever since I came back here.
So this is a good time to focus on and be inspired by the inner you.
Yeah.
And not be so much inspired by outwardly things.
Yeah, I have to go in now.
Exactly. And
I
so,
have to.
On that note, I'm going to bring this to a conclusion, and this has been the lovely Mrs. Verna Shook.
I'm not Mrs., I'm Miss.
Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, lovely Miss Verna Shook. And I'm Martin Turner, by the way. And we are URC, and this has been Compost.